Hey, Composer Gloves here, and today I'm going to show you an instrument I made for KONTAKT called Gloves Bell Tree. And it is a bell tree. A bell tree is a bunch of bells stacked on top of each other, and they get bigger as they go down. You run a mallet over it, creates a really nice shimmering texture used as a percussive element. However, I took a different approach. I sampled it as a regular bell tree with a bunch of different mallets. Then I also sampled it on each bell individually. Then I went through and tuned some of those so that I could write melodies with them, as well as I went through and wrote a randomization engine and gave a whole bunch of extra cool options. And I condensed it all into one bell tree. Now I'm going to show you a demo track so you can hear what it sounds like, and then I'll talk you through the features and show you why it's unique and cool. But I'm going to show it to you using I think 6 bell trees I have here. I'm going to use 6 individuals, but if you wanted to, you could very easily do this on one piano roll using this. So it's been made to interface in a really cool, nifty way that I'll also show you. But it's a little more straightforward to look at if you see them all on different MIDI channels, instead of having them all overlaid on the same one. So I'm going to play it for you right now, and then we'll talk about it. It's about a minute long, and it demonstrates a lot of the different capabilities it has. It really would help achieve music of a world music kind, or act as a percussive element inside a track, give it extra rhythm, drive, or maybe be a little bell on top. I'll show you. There's a lot of options you have. So an entire track made with nothing but a bell tree. So yeah, there you have it. So a pretty cool thing. It's got this sort of an unusual texture, but very percussive and made completely using just bell trees. As you can see, if you were to combine this with other instruments, we could get a really cool dynamic thing going. It could help out pretty much any genre. I am playing it at a very short latency, so there are a couple sample clicks and pops, but that's just a result of my computer just trying to keep up with screen recording and doing this as well. So what we have here is, if we open it up, there are a couple design philosophies that sort of went into this. So I showed you this one because it's sort of the most interesting one to look at. You saw this this is actually a mixer. You saw this mixer just going nuts, just moving all around. And what it's doing is it's randomizing the mix every time a note is hit. And this is done to make it so that it literally will never repeat the same mix twice. It's a really cool thing. And so the idea was I wanted to be able to play melodies. I wanted to have a traditional sounding bell tree that has like hits and stuff. So you heard like hits and rolls and things going on in there. And I also wanted to give you extended range as well as control over the randomization in an intuitive manner, and the ability to select samples in an intuitive manner and do it all in one patch. And so I sat down, wrote out an idea, and came up with this. Went and did a whole bunch of recording. There's actually 2 mic positions for some of these. The mic positions themselves, they're not like incredibly different mic positions at this point. So I don't consider that one of the stronger points. I consider one of the stronger points the way the engine works while you're composing, because it's super easy, straightforward, don't have to do a whole lot of thinking, but it gives you a lot of cool results very quickly. So I'm going to open up a bell tree in a separate KONTAKT so I don't have to deal with the MIDI nightmare of trying to figure out which one I'm controlling or changing the track in the background or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new KONTAKT And on this one, I'm just going to load up bell tree. So here's the bell tree, and it loads up by default with the Pluck articulation. So we have over here a bunch of different articulations, Pluck, tuned, hits, brush, rolls, and the mallet types. And let me go ahead and just play for you the different articulations, and then I'll talk about the features because you want to know what it sounds like first, right? So Plucked, what Plucked is it's the bell tree samples, and there's the individual bell samples, and then, well, let me play it for you, and then I'll explain it. So here's the Plucked sound. As you get lower, they get longer. We could do a randomize on every note. And so they get longer because it's based on pitch tuning. Did I just lose audio or something? What's going on here? Oh, I switched to hits by accident. I hit a key switch. So that's Plucked, and the idea is that's going to be some sort of an embellishment, sort of a specialty thing. There's an example of that all throughout this track. So then we have Tuned, and Tuned has a randomization feature, but you're able to select specific samples and play things, and you can get very chime-like textures out of it. So let me go ahead and reset these to their default position. So that's the upper range. If we go down, you can get really low, sort of wonky textures. You're able to select a particular sample by controlling the round robin, which basically randomly selects, hello, there we go, which basically randomly selects a sample. And we can, like, let's say 4 is not doing it for us. We want sample number 3. So that's pretty nifty for melody reasons. And I went through and tuned them. There's actually 9 samples is how this works. And so that came from a bell tree. That's not a sound most people would expect to come. They would expect things in the hits and brush and roll category. So when you click them, a little assortment comes up, and if we scroll up the keyboard, it's actually color-coded hits. These are just random hits, but meant to be something that you can do and sort of layer into a percussive loop. The green is like multiple notes. If we go into the green. You have a round robin option. You can turn it off simply by clicking it. So these hits don't have them as the blue notes that we're talking about in this case. So that's the hits. If we go over to the brush, we have so there's a bunch of different mallet types, hard, plastic, stick, felt, and they are color coordinated again with our little key here. And we're able to, so these are the felt. Let's play those first, I guess. There's 2 of them. So brush is just a one-shot sample, like just one deal. These are your stick. And then we have our, what is this? Green, hard. And then we have our plastic. Which I really like the sound of the plastic. It's a lot more mellow. Okay, and then finally we have rolls. And so rolls, they have been set to loop, and then the idea is you're going to find something that will really jive with what it is you're trying to do. See, we have 2 mic positions here. And so that's what's going on there. We also have plastic for these as well. So that's what's going on there. That's basically what it sounds like. Now let's go through and talk about the engine. Pretty cool deal. So the engine, the way it works is there are 9 samples, and each one of these has been tuned, and it only applies to the Pluck and tuned settings. I'm going to be using tuned because it's a little more practical to be using tuned with this. And so I showed you that there's the ability to select your sample by controlling the round robin. So round robin is when you have multiple samples of the same thing, and then you can do cycle round robin where you cycle through them to make it sound more real, or you can have a completely random round robin. So there are various reasons why you would pick each one. This one is a completely random round robin because it's a percussive sound, and instead of going through the same sample hit, because it's a bell tree, it's sort of a weird thing to sample. I chose 9 samples out of the bunch that I did that I enjoyed, and I created a sample channel for every single one of them. So you can go through and control each one of them, but it's incredibly unintuitive to go through and adjust all these knobs manually. So you're able to randomize the mix by clicking it here and sort of get some interesting results. But if you're going to randomize the mix once, you may want to do it every time you hit a note. So you can do that here as well. So if we play some lower notes. And you notice they don't jump between incredibly high or low values. So you're able to boost the volume here and not suffer from like crazy samples popping and sticking out of the sound. It's a reasonable boost in cut. So the round robin can be turned on and off though. So you could have it so that, because maybe you want to trigger a layered sample. So let's hop back to the first. So we have round robin on, it's selecting individual samples. You're able to select the range it chooses from here. And so we could say, hey, select samples 3 through 7. So now the only mixer knobs that will really matter is 3 through 7. I've turned off my randomize on note. So it's randomly selecting sounds between 3 and 7. You see, it sounds pretty cool. And you're still able to play rather tonal things, which was important to me, being able to play notes and whatnot. So we're able to actually turn off the round robin, which completely turns off any cycling. So now all the samples will be played at once, and you're able to create a layered sound instead. And so this could be really nifty as well. Right? Pretty cool. I think it's useful. Okay, so because I'm a composer, I'm using stuff all the time, and I wanted to make something that, you know, made sense to me. I'm given features all the time that I'm like, this is a cool feature, but I'm not sure where I would use it. So maybe just a programmer is having a field day. So that's what's going on there. That's the idea behind the mixer. So we can turn it back on and we go back to our cycling. That's the randomization, and you can control click stuff to set it back to 0 dB. Now you might also be wondering, as a brief side note, why these are coconuts actually. Why these are coconuts when there's pine trees in the background? And the answer is, originally I had this excellent idea, but I didn't have a graphic designer, so I had to do all my own graphic design. And my brother, who I was talking to about this project, was super into the idea of coconuts and was dying to do a coconut knob. And so I said, if you get me a coconut knob, because originally it was going to be a bell tree, so there'd be like I was originally going to have a hand-drawn bell tree and then make these hand-drawn knobs that act as like parts of the vine of the bell tree. It was a crazy idea. But he made these coconut knobs, and I ended up going with this other design, which this is actually was a bell tree, and it looks like a bell tree, but I did some things in Photoshop to it, and the background and the grass and all that. And so the reason they're coconuts is because he really wanted this, and once he made the knob, you know, I had to use the knob. So that's why these are coconuts. And I think they're cool. You're unique now, right? So, and that's also why they're placed sort of the way they are. They were going to be hanging off of vines sort of in nature, but it didn't really work out. So anyways, that's what's going on there. That's the mixer. So we also have this ADSR, and I want to show you something cool here. This is another thing I'm always miffed about. There's 2 things that miff me when I buy high-end sample libraries. Is a lot of times they lock the back end, so you can't get to the samples because, you know, they're high-end. They don't want people stealing it, I suppose. But it missed me because then you can't do extended range stuff. So if I did the actual range of this bell tree, it'd be like 1 octave. Not even cool. You could pitch stretch these things. and get a bunch of really cool textures that otherwise wouldn't exist. You'll never get that sound out of a regular acoustic bell tree. So those are, I'm always like, oh man, where's my extended range stuff? Why can't I do that? So I include that here. And another thing is the ADSR. Oftentimes they leave out basic things like this. The reason why this is a big deal to me is, check it out. If we just put a little bit of a glide on our attack, a little bit more, we get that sound. And that's like super useful and cool. Let's go ahead and settle on one sample instead of jumping around to, a bunch. Let's set this one to 4. Okay. So you see, we are able to now play very tonal things, and this is a really nifty thing to have. We could change the decay, get a very sharp pluck. So sort of otherworldly sounds can come out of this. Now the other stuff, the reason I'm talking about this stuff is just because this is sort of just things that I wish I could do. There's an included reverb. You can turn it on off with the size control. Same with the delay. You're able to sync the delay with this knob. This controls the feedback. So these are both delay controls. That's pretty much the controls. Now you notice some controls disappear. The mixer controls don't. They're always there, but they only apply to these settings. When you go into the hits, brush, or rolls category, the mic positions come into play and they appear, but they disappear for the other ones. So we're given a little mallet type dialogue. I'm not sure. Menu. That's what I'm looking for. A mallet type menu that gives you the color coordination with the keyboard. So you'll know what mallet is being used. So like here, there are only 2 felt mallet sounds. And that's because the felt mallet was incredibly quiet and I was running low on time in the recording session. So that's what's going on there. And we also have a rolled category that does the same thing. And they're just samples that have been looped. That's all that's going on there. So if we were to go up here, I tried to make them sort of intuitive to play because I work on somewhat a small keyboard. So things generally start on C or they start on F, and they're generally an octave apart if they're things that are of a categorical nature. So that's what's going on. And that's pretty much it. Pretty cool. If we go back to the other one, I can sort of now explain to you what's going on here. So, the Keyswitch thing. I didn't show you that. So the nifty thing about this is if you work with BRSO, Articulate, I believe I said those letters in the right order. If you have the ability to do key switches, and if we come down here and hit our very bottom notes, we notice that they begin to switch through our articulations. And so what you can actually do is we can configure one really quick. So we can go into BRSO and we can go, it says flute, we'll just rename it like Belltree. And it's a MIDI out plugin. And what's nifty is, let's go ahead and just rename the first one Pluck. And that is at -C2. This is something that is not always standard, but more and more people are actually writing the octave that things are in. Because sometimes there's a 2-octave offset. But -C# 2, D2. And what I'm doing is I'm matching the articulations. I have 1, 2, 5 right here, right? So I'm going to go C#, D, D#, and then E. And now if we rename it, this is our pluck. This is tuned. This is hits. I spend sometimes so long doing this with some libraries. Burst. Whoops. Rush. And finally, we have roll. Okay. So now if I go into the piano roll here, let's go to a new pattern. If I go into the piano roll, and I'm not sure how this works with other DAWs. I'm only familiar with FL in this regard. But if we click, we see that they appear here. And if we write with these different colored notes, we can trigger the different samples. So if I write with this color, it'll trigger this key switch, allowing me to write like so. So let's say that I'm doing something like this. Maybe I'm doing something percussive. And we'll go ahead and play it. And let's say I want them longer. The Plucked is created from pitching up samples a lot. It's really interesting if we could talk for a bit about weird things you could do by pitching up and down samples and achieving different styles of formant shifts. but now they're a bit longer. Cool. So now let's say, okay, I want to work with the tuned ones now. So we could come over here to tuned, and bang. Now we are working with tuned, and we can even layer them. And let's say, oh, I want a hits going on in here. So I'll put a hits down. Got to figure out what octave. That's the only thing I wish FL would let you do is color key ranges with names. I'm pretty sure you can do it. I just haven't taken the time to learn it. But then you could customize patches and also be able to link it with the patch. That way when you load up a KONTAKT library and load up a patch you made, everything's like bam. It'd be like gloriously organized. But anyways, now we can go ahead. Let's do some assorted hits. So that's these higher ones. So you see, there we are, we're off and running. And so you see the key switches are now in action, and that's really cool. So that's largely how the track just gets made. So I start off with this Motif Rhythm, right? And I'm using the same note, but because I have the randomized mix and the round robin on, it allows me to create this type deal, and I layer it with some hits from the hits section. And there's also a pluck deal going on here. This and what I did was I wrote out a chord and put it on ARP and let the round robin do the rest. And the randomization function, which is all the knobs move around. So if we were to open up this, that's what this is. It's actually just a chord. Which it's not working right now. There's no sound coming out. Did I mute something I should not have muted? This is bell tree 5, second to last bell tree. Troubleshooting, you know. Oh, I put it on hits by accident. Let's put it back to Pluck. There you go. Don't change your key settings if you want to do that. You probably want to like label what the rules are. Like this is the bass. These are like the melody notes and whatnot. Okay, so go through there, we establish it. I begin to just layer in and bring in different elements that I thought were cool features that I have now explained, such as the notes, different tones you can get out of it. And yeah, so that's Glove's Bell Tree. It's $5. And so I spent way too much time doing the coding. I got kind of into it. When you're making an instrument, you sort of think, what if I could do this? And then you think, what if I could do this? And then you realize you got to redo the graphics if you want to do that. Or you got to redo a lot, like you got to rethink how you're going to code it again. So now you got to like start over, or at least redo a chunk of it. And at the end, when it all works and everything's there and every feature's right there, you're like, oh, this is awesome. But getting there is quite a challenge. If you have any questions about this, let me know. I'll put a link in the description to this. And if you're looking for other instruments, things that are reasonable that I can do, because renting a studio is freaking expensive. And so I actually got in on, because I know a guy. And so he said, yeah, and I only had a little bit of time, a very small amount of time. So I'm like, dude, let's sample this bow tree and make something cool. And so thus the bow tree was born. Subscribe and have a blessed day.